Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning. Man, you got a tie on, man.
Good morning. Good morning.
How's everybody?
Yeah, we're going to start in about 2 minutes. We're going to give a couple more folks an opportunity to hop on.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thank you so much.
All right. I say let's start. And then for those that, chime in a little bit later, they'll be able to see the recordings later on. So, I'll start off, first off, for those who don't know, who may not be a part of 100 Black Men. My name is Aldrin Ennis, and I serve as the president of the organization, which was started in 1963 by some luminary men who saw it fit to rally behind Judge Robert at the time, and formed the organization 100 Men. And subsequently, the Honorable David Dinkins thought that it would make more sense and the organization would be more prolific if they included the word Black in it. So henceforth the name 100 Black Men. So, I won't belabor the point. Today's topic is around cannabis, the legalization of it, the proprietorship of it. So this hour plus discussion isn't meant to cover all aspects of cannabis, but is meant to at least start the conversation and impart some important information that could be of use to the Black and Brown communities. Today, we have two well-versed panelists. The first is Jesse Campoamor. Jesse is a principal and chief strategy officer with Cultural Productions. Prior to that, he was deputy secretary for intergovernmental affairs at the executive chamber for the governor. And second, we have Dr. Maurice Hinson. He's board certified in internal medicine, certified in cannabis medicine, and the owner of MediRootz Medical Group. So gentlemen, thank you for joining us for this most important conversation. I know that this is an issue that has affected our communities throughout the United States for decades, and in particular, the criminalization of cannabis and people doing serious jail time for distribution and sales of it. I'll start with Jesse. You've been in government and politics for at least a decade. What got you into the cannabis industry, and why is it important for young folks like you to be involved?
First of all, Aldrin, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for inviting us to be part of this panel. This is such a reputable organization. It's really great to be able to talk to you great guys. So what got me into cannabis? It's a really funny story, actually. About 3 years ago, I worked for a firm called Capellino and Company, which is one of the preeminent municipal lobbying firms in New York City. And I was in a limo with some clients, some Canadians actually from some folks from Canada, who were kind of gloating to me that they were running the cannabis business in New York. These were all Canadian white gentlemen who were in a boisterous way just telling me how they ran cannabis in New York, and that to me just didn't sit well. Being somebody who's born and raised in this city, having friends that have been arrested, that have been part of the trade, it just didn't feel right that, an industry that we built was being claimed by folks that aren't from our neighborhoods, aren't from our city. And so, I made it my business to learn everything I could about what legalization, what was happening on the legalization side, and started building a book of business for Capellino. When the governor asked me to join the team, 60% of my portfolio we negotiated would be working to help draft and pass the legislation, MRTA. Or at that point, he wanted the CRTA, and we can get into that later. Look, this is an industry that, the highest valuated cannabis company was valuated at $5 billion last year. They had $500 million in revenue. And so, what is deeply important to me, and this is why, our community needs to get involved more than ever, is this is not a regular, people aren't selling widgets, right? And I think what you see in this industry, and why a lot of the compliant operators are failing, is because a lot of these guys, they come out of the M&A world, they come out of real estate, they come out of banking and Wall Street. And what they don't understand is that there is a culture, there's a lifestyle associated with this product that they're just not tapped into. And in many ways, that is a culture that our communities have helped create. And so to build this industry that will be a multi-billion-dollar industry and not participate in the wealth creation, not participate in the opportunity to operate, to me was a big missed opportunity. And so figuring out how to create on-ramps, right, to remove the moats that are around the industry, but create on-ramps for people from our community of my generation and above to participate as operators, to participate in the wealth creation was vitally important to me. And I'm thankful that the governor and that the state provided me the opportunity to do that. And we've now passed a program that really provides the opportunity for that. Conception and execution are two different things, but from plainly from reading the language, there's a lot of opportunity for our community to prosper under this bill. But still a lot needs to happen from an advocacy and execution standpoint. So I'll stop there.
Awesome. But you know, you and I, we had lunch maybe a month or two ago, and you did tell me about this new company that you're working for. But what resonated to me was that you said that the industry is more than just, you know, getting a license to have a dispensary. We as Black and Brown people have to look at this holistically, right? And all of the other businesses that come out of just supplying the dispensary. Can you talk about some of that?
Sure, guys. It's all about picks and shovels, right? It's about you guys want to you know be the end user, and as Aldrin is referring to, as an operator, or you want to build the pipes, build the tracks, build the infrastructure for the industry. What does that mean? There are what we call auxiliary industries that are non-plant touching businesses that can prosper in this boom, in this growth. Things such as simple as potential accounting for individuals, branding. Who's going to create the next amazing brand in cannabis? In addition, thinking about the security component, right? There's going to be a whole industry of people that are just handling the money involved in this industry, transporting it from places of business to financial institutions. The installation, actually building out these grow houses, building out these dispensaries, there's the construction opportunities there as well. There will be so many opportunities that are non-plant touching for folks that have still some concern about the legality of it from a federal perspective, that allow for business that opportunity. And so, you know, as we think about this industry, I think folks are so focused and locked in on, I need to get a license. Well, yeah, but there's only going to be a limited amount of licenses, right? And let's say hypothetically there's less than 1,000 dispensary licenses. There's going to be way more than 1,000 people that want to operate potentially a cannabis retail operation. So how else can we find entry points for those individuals to prosper from this boom? Right. And it's all these auxiliary businesses that we discuss, that there's an immense opportunity. And I can tell you now, nobody has really cornered that space. Who's going to provide the medium for the grow operations, right? There's all these different opportunities that given time and preparation, folks can really take advantage of.
Awesome. I want to pivot a little bit and reach out to Dr. Hinson. You know, he's been in internal medicine and found this new space of cannabis, and he has some amazing ideas. But you know, when people talk about, you know, I need to get some type of medical documentation stating that I can use the product. Dr. Hinson, can you talk about that? Like, what? How can someone become a medical cannabis patient?
Yeah, that's well, I appreciate the invitation to be on the panel. But yeah, with regard to becoming a medical patient, I think that's one of the sort of the major gaps that we have within the industry, right? So, you know, we have both the recreational element and we have the medicinal element. And, you know, at the time, or I would say up until last September, I was strictly a practicing clinician. I was a hospitalist at New York Presbyterian, Queens, an assistant professor of clinical medicine at Weill Cornell. But I wasn't satisfied with my role as a physician overall within this healthcare system. And that's something, you know, I can go into a little deeper later. But the way I pivoted out of clinical medicine was to certify patients for medical cannabis. And since doing that, I've found that the overwhelming majority of the people who I was certifying were white people. And, you know, that struck me, you know, serving as an independent contractor for these huge companies that were certifying patients, that we just weren't being reached for whatever reason. So, you know, not only have we been criminalized the most for cannabis possession, but now we're reaping the therapeutic benefits the least. And so that's where MediRootz came in. I created this company to specifically target underrepresented communities who have been victimized by the war on drugs, to focus my outreach and education. And another service that we provide is to certify patients to become medical patients. So, there are a number of different online services where you can go on and fill out a registration form and speak to a licensed provider. But we at MediRootz, we're specifically targeting our communities because for one, I think there's a huge educational gap. We sort of have to deconstruct this notion that cannabis is just for smoking, it's just for getting high. That's sort of how they've been able to demonize it to the point where they were effectively able to prohibit its use. But it's an incredible therapeutic if used appropriately. And I say that very explicitly because you can use anything inappropriately. I see people in the hospital who've died because they've drank too much water, and we know how important water is.
Right.
So virtually anything could be a therapeutic if used appropriately, and virtually everything could be a toxin if used inappropriately. And so, what we hope to and what we're working towards is the proper education of cannabis and its therapeutic benefits for our communities. And so right now we're certifying people and we're building a telehealth network system where people can come back and we can do follow-up consultations and track people, follow people longitudinally as they introduce this therapeutic into their medical regimen.
Dr. Hinson, how are you able to start your business, right? So, when in speaking with Jesse, there are these other businesses, supporting businesses outside of having a dispensary. And it sounds like that's the type of business that you have. How are you able to start your business?
Well, yeah, I started off as an independent contractor for some of the bigger companies. I actually didn't know much about the certification process until one of my colleagues introduced me to it. And then I started to do a little more research and, found out, the state had a medical program, and in order to become a licensed provider, you had to go through their certification process. And there's some other online courses that you could take to specialize in cannabis medicine. So I ended up doing that. And as an independent contractor, I was able to sort of see the process. I saw the pitfalls. I saw, where things could be optimized. And so I said, rather than, taking a fraction of the revenue, they make, X amount of money, only give me about a quarter, I can go straight to the consumer myself and provide a better service, especially for our people. And so that's what I did. And I said, you know what, let me learn the business as an independent contractor and then do it better as my own owner.
Absolutely. And Jesse, I saw that you wanted to add something to that.
Well, look, the work that doctor is doing is so important. I think when you look at the medical program in New York State right now, you have less than 150,000 patients in the program, which is abysmal, absolutely abysmal. And part of that is twofold. Part of it is up until just recently, flower was not allowed in the program. There was only oil, right? Why is that important for our communities where maybe people can't afford to spend $120 for medicine out of pocket? That's a drastic financial hit to our wallets. And so adding flower to the program was a big step in the right direction. But the other piece, and this is the piece that really the doctor really adds another component to, is that there was a lack of diversity in who was actually seeing patients and prescribing and recommending medication to patients, right? And there was a lack of cultural diversity. There was a lack of cultural competency in who those individuals are. It is so important that we have medical professionals from our community that understand our culture, understand our history, helping us decide what the best appropriate medical protocol is. And that was just lacking. And so to see diverse doctors that come from Black and brown communities stepping into the fold is such an important piece to help us deliver a successful program and help our stakeholders really understand the value and the health benefits of this medicine, because it is a medicine. And so I really applaud the doctor and the work that he's done. We need more to step up, quite frankly, because that there is a reason why our communities are still going to our traditional outlets to receive the medicine versus going to compliant, regulated institutions for that. It has everything to do with the lack of representation of our medical professionals as well. So.
Now, what about the barriers to entry, right? Every business has a barrier to entry, whether it's a sole proprietorship, whether it's a franchise, what have you. Both of you guys, Dr. Hinson and Jesse, what are the barriers to entry? Startup capital, is it available through the banks? How do you, fund that business?
I'll start, Doctor, and then you can jump into your practice. I'll talk about a little bit from an operating perspective, right? Look, right now, all we have are 10 operators in the state that are referred to as MROs, medical registered organizations. All of those companies are vertical companies, meaning the application process itself was a $2.5 to $5 million process, right? We call license pursuit, and that's all risky capital. To answer your question, Algin, because this is still federally illegal, you cannot go to most banks and actually you can't go to any bank and receive a loan to pursue this business opportunity. And so you have to go to private equity, private retail to fund these operations. And that brings a whole slew of challenges with it, because the deals that the state has seen across the country have been ridiculously predatory. Master service agreements where the economics work against the minority. These deals where, for all intents and purposes, Black and brown individuals are just used as stepping stones and ladders to get into the industry and not given real economic power in the process, right? And so, the adult use program will break up the vertical, meaning as part of the adult use program, the 21, the recreational program, which is going to come online in the next 18 months, you will only be allowed and able to operate either in the cultivation space or in the retail space. You won't be able to have licenses on both sides of the tiers, on both tiers. And so that actually will lower the cost barrier, the threshold, right? There are 9 license types that we can get into later. But, for a delivery license, for example, it could be as low as $25,000 to $50,000 to pursue and get the license. For a retail license, it can be as much as $500,000 to $250,000 just to pursue the license, right? This is just to get the paper. After you get the paper, then you need to actually build out. Let's say you get a retail license, you need to build out physical dispensaries and do that whole design, and that can cost up to $2.3 million, 2.5. But that really, once you have the paper, raising money, raising capital in the capital markets becomes a whole lot easier, because it's a bit of what we call a golden ticket. That's what people really refer to it as. But those are the barriers that the state has really thought about how to remove, because these are costs. These end up becoming so costly, so capital intensive, that many of our people just don't have access to that kind of private capital, right? Because we can't go to a commercial lender for it. And so that becomes the challenge that, the state is thinking about ways to provide support. We can talk about that later, but flat out, this is a costly pursuit.
And having that paper, is it similar to like a taxi cab having a medallion, right? Can it be transferred from me to someone else, or how would that work?
So the state has to approve transfer of ownership. Technically, the title of the license will never be transferred. Once it gets issued to Algin, for example, it'll always be in your name, but you can transfer ownership of license. And that's a technical term, but what likely will happen in the adult use program is the state will implement a 3-year prohibition on sale and exit. So that the day you get the license, more than likely you won't be able to sell it or exit for 3 years. And the idea there is, look, folks have an opportunity to take a license, turn it into a brand, and turn it into a multi-million-dollar opportunity, where in 3 years, the exit could be upwards of $50 million plus.
Right.
That is an immense opportunity. And so, the state really wants individuals who get these licenses to pursue that opportunity, take those 3 years to build that brand. And then once the prohibition is removed, there'll be an opportunity to exit. The question then becomes, and these are opportunities for you guys to opine on and to inform the state, is should what we call social equity Black and brown license holders be permitted to sell their license to anybody? Or should they only be allowed to sell to other Black and brown entrepreneurs? And I think there are some interesting pluses and minuses on both sides of that, right? If the intent of the bill was for wealth creation, then then hypothetically you want to allow that seller to sell to the highest bidder, right? And then that should be the only thing determining. But at the same time, when you look at the industry, less than 7% of the industry is represented by Black and brown individuals. We want to make sure that our people are operators in this space as well. And so that becomes the push and pull that we all have to figure out, because the state is looking for individuals like yourself to give them some direction on this. They don't have it all figured out. Big surprise, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Hinson, barriers to entry.
Yeah, financing, like my brother was saying, even as an ancillary business, I don't touch the plant. I just certify for people to have access to medicinal cannabis. But even as a physician, the options for financing are non-existent. And so I have to get creative. And private equity is one route that I'm exploring, but that takes for me to show at least 6 months of revenue with growth potential. So me being able to access large networks and increase my client base and things like that, that's going to be, my ability to, raise capital from private equity is going to be contingent on my success in that avenue. And right now, I think the beauty of what I'm doing with this particular model is that it's telehealth. So the overhead is very low. So I can say the overwhelming majority of my revenue is profit. I only have one other provider working with me and an administrative assistant, and we're able to tackle a sort of our bandwidth is large enough to not have any issues in terms of us, being able to effectively turn over the certification process within, same day guarantee, which we promote. But again, I think the barriers to entry and with my particular business, again, is like any other, is access to capital, financing options. And for me, I think that, I've been able to sort of weave through that barrier just by keeping my overhead low at the moment. But again, I can only operate within such a small realm. I would need more funding to hire more providers to have a greater reach, outside of New York. Right now we're focusing on New York, urban areas in New York, but this is a problem nationally. One of the things that I that I saw recently is in Florida. Florida has one of the better medical cannabis programs. I think they've got well over 500,000 medical patients with a comparable population to New York. But when you look at their numbers, 53% of the residents in Florida are whites, right? About 17 are Black.
Right.
But Blacks represent 1.9% of medical patients for cannabis. And, one of the issues that I saw in looking at this data is a lot of it is not reported. You can't make conclusions on things that aren't studied, Right. So, and it's very, to date, I haven't seen any real good national data in terms of racial disparities in the medical cannabis program. It's very state dependent. New York is not as bad, but again, they're holding their cards tight also. They keep their demographic data very close, probably for obvious reasons, and so this is why it becomes so important for us to focus our attention on purposely going out to our community, because for one, they're not even discussing this being a problem because they're not even studying it, but we know it. Like I see it anecdotally, and it's not hard to tell, so it's something that we have to sort of impress upon each other. Again, I always talk about deconstructing and decolonizing our perception about cannabis. It is a cultural thing, and they love to, when it's to their economic benefit, they love to embrace our culture.
Right.
But if we get any piece of that pie, now we gotta,
it's a problem.
Now it's taboo. Now we gotta make it illegal.
Yeah.
So I think so programming like this needs to happen frequently, and sort of, you know, nationwide. You know, we can't look at this like this is a problem with New York. This is a problem nationally.
Absolutely, absolutely. Another question for you. You know, being a medical doctor, I'm assuming that most of your patients come to you because of pain. And there's so many different strains of cannabis, right? Depending on the THC level. So THC versus CBD and other forms of tinctures. How do you go about choosing which product type is the best type to either purchase or for you to prescribe?
Yeah. So this is where it becomes really important to actually follow your patient. You know, we got the problem in healthcare, and this is one of the reasons why I left, is you know, is very pharmaceutical driven, right? And the way we approach disease is by way of just prescribing a pill, right? We lack the understanding of the root of that disease, that person's biopsychosocial factors that develop into that disease, and how to effectively mitigate that disease without having to depend on pharmaceutical agents, right? Now, I say all that to say, cannabis gives us a great alternative because it's natural, it's a biologic, it's a plant, right? It encompasses well over 100 different cannabinoids, terpenes, flavonoids, and all in combination, which effectively produce the therapeutic benefit that we're looking for. It's not like aspirin, where they took a plant and broke it down into salicylic acid, put it in a tablet, and then gave it to you. Now you have a sore hand, you have arthritis, so you're taking aspirin, but now you've got acid reflux, you've got peptic ulcer disease, now you got GI bleeding, you're bleeding out your butt. Now you have to, you know, is it a hospital emergency? You have to get IV fluids and blood transfusions, and you're in the ICU. Like, these things happen. I'm not being dramatic. These things actually happen from people taking one too many aspirins, one too many ibuprofens. And the reason being is because here within this healthcare system, we like to isolate each compound, and that's what gives all the side effects. You know, nothing in nature exists in isolation. Everything is sort of a product of this interdependent network of various elements working together, right? So when you introduce cannabis as a plant, whether it's the flower, whether it's the oil, you are getting, or at least I promote, more of the full spectrum, all right? Where you get all of the cannabinoids, you get all of the terpenes, you get all of the flavonoids acting in synergy, acting as a network. I'm not a fan of isolates. Like, you see a lot of people selling CBD isolate. I'm not a fan of that. That's the same thing as aspirin. You just have this one thing, and now you get all these other side effects, when really it's the network, it's the complementary action of all these things working in synergy that affords you that therapeutic benefit. And so what I usually suggest to people in my initial consultation is look for full spectrum products. So full spectrum means it contains all of the cannabinoids. They didn't remove anything, right? And then try different things. I think the beauty and difficulty about this plant is that it affects everyone differently, right? You know, I don't think there's any two people on this planet whose biochemistry is the same. Therefore, the things that you introduce are going to have different effects. So there may be a trial and error period. You know, some people take a small amount of THC, boom, they're no good all night, you know, but other people, they can take mounds of it and it doesn't affect them the same way. It's all about their metabolism, you know, their biochemical composition. And so I always tell people, expect to go through maybe like a 3-month trial and error period. You know, this, you know, your disease didn't occur overnight. And so it's not going to be resolved overnight. This is going to take some time, you know, and I think that's one of the, again, all of this, we're all conditioned. We want instant results. We want that instant gratification, but we have to get back to understanding that nature is a process and nature is patient. And therefore, you know, how we treat disease has to follow that same mindset. You know, we got to get beyond the, okay, I could just take this pill and tomorrow I'm gonna be good. Like, no, that's not how these things work. So I always, again, you know, kind of went around the belt, but I always suggest, and I would say, come back to see me, every couple weeks, and then we can start to tailor your formulation. Some people need a higher dose or a higher.
Dr. Hinson, you're on mute.
I'm good now?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah, some people, it may take a little bit where we have to sort of tailor the right ratio of different cannabinoids that suit you best. And so it is a process. And I think it's the beauty, it's the challenge. You really have to get into the psychology of your patient, and coach that this is not going to be an instant process. We keep, everyone saw it's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And we gotta get to understanding what are your challenges? Do you think it's actually gonna work? I found that the people who receive the greatest benefit from any medication are those who actually believe that it's gonna work. This power of belief and intent is real. This is why the placebo effect is a real thing.
Right.
So this is a process, and it begins psychologically. This is why, I emphasize deconditioning, deconstructing, decolonizing our belief system, and then getting into, okay, this is actually going to work, because you can't heal the body until you heal the mind first. We have to understand that.
Absolutely. Jesse, I know that you have a hard stop at noon. So what I'm gonna do is ask you one more question and then open up the Q&A so that our guests can ask questions. So we've spoken about the legalization of cannabis, but prior to that, you had a whole slew of Black and brown folks who were incarcerated, may have served their time and now are out. What is the word on getting those criminal charges expunged? Do you have any insight to that?
Sure. So, we've come a long way in the last couple of years. The year prior to passing MRTA, the Senator Bailey had a bill that essentially was decriminalization that works to expunge, if hundreds and thousands of records automatically for low-level marijuana offense and marijuana arrests and marijuana-related incidences with law enforcement. One of the things that I spent a lot of time personally on while in the governor's office was making sure, once those laws were passed, that the state no longer had anybody in its system, in its prison system, for cannabis conviction. When I most recently left the state still had roughly 200 inmates, give or take, that had cannabis-related offenses and were still incarcerated. What I had learned is, and this is a technical term, but there's something called a leading offense, meaning the highest, most egregious offense that the person is arrested for. So, for example, there were individuals that had cannabis-related offenses on their record as part of the arrest, but they also had possession of a firearm or a manslaughter charge or some violent-related offense. Now, the problem there is, and when you really unpack these stories and dive deeper, is you realize the interaction with the police officer started because of some cannabis-related incident, and then it escalated to something else, right? And so it really drives the question of whether those should be expunged as well. But the state has moved aggressively towards automatic expungement. For those that still have a record of cannabis-related offenses that haven't had it expunged, I recommend talking to any legal representation or going to legal aid and presenting your case. The state has made an aggressive effort to remove those transgressions from individuals' records, and rightfully so, because the disproportionality of where the policing was happening, right? Senator Liz Kruger from the Upper East Side always says this. She says her kids were smoking as much as the kids in Central Harlem or in Brooklyn, but the police weren't in her communities, right? The police weren't in those neighborhoods, right? So, there is a massive effort and opportunity to totally erase that part of people's records. But in addition, and this is an important part, the state is giving priority to applicants that either directly have been arrested for cannabis-related offense, or somebody in their immediate family has had an arrest for cannabis-related offense. And that's unique because that's the first time in the country that that a state has made that kind of priority for individuals. That is a relevant consideration as we think about pursuing these licenses, because the opportunity to take something that has been historically a negative can now be reversed to potentially provide an opportunity. And from an advocacy standpoint, there's another point to consider. In Albany right now, the conservatives, the folks on the right, are questioning, why are we giving people who haven't played by the rules an advantage in this market? And what needs to happen, and this is an opportunity for individuals like yourself to participate in, is nobody with a concise, direct voice is countering that and saying those laws were inherently unjust. Those laws were unjustly performed, and created that discrepancy. And so that, there are many opportunities, many spaces for articulate, sharpened, focused voices to be part of this conversation. And so, with that, the opportunity to be part of the program and get your past transgressions removed are very real, very real.
Thank you for that. So, and like I said, I know that you have a hard stop at noon. Dr. Hinson has a little bit more time with us. So what I want to do is open it up to Q&A. So if anyone has a question, please use the icon to raise your hand so that I could call on you. What I do ask is that have your questions directed towards Jesse, since he has the limited time with us, so that he can answer as many questions as possible. And then those that are related to Dr. Hinson, wait until after Jesse's probably hopped off, so that we can, make sure that Jesse has adequate enough time to answer these questions. So I see Reverend Dr. Demetrius, you have your hand up. So can you unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Excuse me if this has been articulated before, but since we know that the greatest challenge, Jesse, is an economic challenge, are there conversations being had around cooperative economics so that people can come in as, equity partners in a collaborative, so that we can sort of bring our bucks together, get the biggest bang for the buck, and then people can become more independent as we grow? If there's any conversations around that, I would love to hear about that. If not, maybe that's something we could consider and sort of flesh out. Thank you.
So thank you so much, and good morning, Reverend Demetrius, Carolina. Thank you so much for that question. So look, there are 9 license types that the adult use program will provide opportunities for applicants to pursue. One of those license types is the third one that I referred to, is actually referred to as a cooperative license. And like non-cannabis cooperatives, a cannabis cooperative must qualify as a New York cooperative under the New York cooperative rules and regulations, which means it has to be comprised of New York residents, either as a New York LLC or an LLP. The capital is basically subordinated capital, so the returns to investors are limited. The organization has to be democratically controlled with 1 vote per member. The operation has to operate according to the 7 principles of the International Cooperative Alliance. These cooperative licenses will allow people to cultivate, process, and sell cannabis to distributors and on-site consumption sites, but not directly retail, will be the only limitation. And so this is an extremely interesting license type that I do encourage folks to look at, because also the state will prioritize that license type and expedite folks to pursue that opportunity. And so, look, I've thought a lot about how faith-based communities with a large population of congregants could potentially participate in this, and the cooperative license is a fascinating one that folks should take a deeper look at. So I hope that's helpful.
And any other questions? Oh, Jesse, you were saying something?
Well, in addition to that, and this is the other thing, in terms of just access to capital, the state has already shared a little bit, but I can share some more because I've been personally working on this. The state's going to roll out what they're calling a $200 million success fund. And the 200 million is really the floor, not the ceiling, on how much they're going to raise. That fund will deploy capital to licensees, and it will play several functions. It will actually lease the space that will be used for retail, use DASNY, our state dormitory authority of the state of New York, which is partly a construction entity, to build out that infrastructure, to build out those retail locations, provide a $2.5 million loan to each individual, and a set of technical and legal support. Because as we all know, even if I was successful in the legacy space, there are components to 280E tax compliance, to complex real estate deals, to traditional marketing and advertising, to HR components that some folks just haven't experienced, right? And so the state is committed, and they're calling that a success fund, right? So it's not just about deploying the capital, but making sure those that receive the capital end up in a successful outcome. So I think that's a very promising thing to also take a look at if you guys are interested in the opportunities. But the cooperative license is, without a doubt, I think, one of the most interesting licenses that many will overlook in this process.
Any other questions out there? Please use the icon to raise your hand.
Hello, everyone. I do have a question.
Yes.
Hello. I'm not sure if anybody got a chance to see on the chat. So I'm a mental health professional. I mainly see patients with depression, anxiety, PTSD, and education has been a big part of the practice, being able to educate Black and Brown communities since I'm in the Bronx. Something that I noticed, and I would like to ask, what is the plan to support mental health patients to have more access to the medical marijuana card? Because as I noticed with some of the clients and some of the people that I have seen having the access to it, or even paying, because as you know, insurance don't pay for the medical marijuana card from what I have seen. And it's a struggle for the people in the community. And also they don't even know that a lot of people still don't know that they can get a medical marijuana card for mental health conditions such as PTSD and a lot of other medical conditions, as we know. So on my end, I'm really trying to raise awareness in the Bronx and just, bring it to the community, because they need to see Black and Brown faces like ourselves in this field. So thank you for the information you're sharing. I just want to know, what is your plan to include mental health?
So just one thing, I don't work for the state anymore. So that's, when you say my plan, I think you're referring, what is the state's plan, correct?
Yes, the state.
Okay. So look, I think two things to keep in mind is that until recently, you could only get access to the medicine if you had 14 specific health conditions. What the state's recently done is they've said, let's remove those conditions. Let's make this a determination between the medical healthcare professional and the patient. And what that did is it allowed a way more expansive list of ailments and list of issues to receive treatment for cannabis as an alternative to other pharmaceuticals and other methods of treatment. And so I think that was a key step in progress in getting access to the plant. The other piece that I touched on earlier, I'm not sure if you were on yet, is and this talks to the point about accessibility, is that until recently, flower was not in the medical program as well. You can only get oils or tinctures or edibles, which were all extremely costly, way more costly than flower. I think what the state is working on, and this is something that you could think about engaging the state on, we can follow up on this, is they're starting to do medical trials and test the efficacy of these treatment programs to deal with specific ailments. We're going to need that empirical data, because it's not really the state that we need to convince, it's actually the health insurers. So we got to take this data, go back to the health insurers with this information and say, hey, this is an effective alternative to the treatment program that you guys will pay for. Can we get you guys to start, covering medical costs for this ailment, for this mental health condition? Unfortunately, because it's still federally illegal and still federally a Schedule II product, we're limited on what kind of testing we can do in New York, in America with that, right? If you look at studies in Israel, talk about PTSD, they've been using this to treat their veterans and their folks coming back from combat for decades, since the 70s, and have advocated for its efficacy. But we can't do that yet. We can't do those kind of tests in America because of some of the federal regulations and limitations on that. And so there are some brave doctors out there and brave individuals who are going out there on a limb and trying to do these studies, but they risk their practice, they risk their license in the process of doing that under the current system, under the current regulations. So, until the feds deschedule and make it easier for the testing, we need to work with the state. We need to work in our communities and engage our healthcare underwriters, the insurance companies, to start to convince them that this is an effective alternative that should be paid for out of pocket. Paid for by the insurance companies as an alternative to out of pocket payments, making it way more accessible. Only other thing I'll say is that I know the state is currently working with some medical practitioners on workers' compensation. So they're looking specifically at muscular and skeleton pain, and using cannabis as a treatment to that pain as an alternative to opioids. That's what they're focusing on now. They will transition to mental health and some other components down the road. But those are the kind of partnerships and studies that we have to think about engaging the state on to really affect the outcome that we're looking for, which is make this drug accessible, make it easy to understand how to use, and affordable. And those are key components.
Yeah, and I'll add in terms of affordability, that's going to be the biggest challenge, because that's more of a political issue, as my brother just mentioned, because it's not federalized yet. We still have some time before Medicaid, Medicare will actually reimburse for it. In terms of accessibility, because the state has just released their enhancement program, as you just mentioned, it allows us as the providers to have discretion over who has access to this card. And so prior to these enhancements, anxiety, depression, insomnia, things that a lot of people have that we know cannabis is good for, were actually not eligible diagnoses. But now that they've instituted this enhancement program, they leave it up to us to determine whether or not their anxiety, depression, or insomnia warrants a medical card. In terms of specifically for mental health and cannabis, I'm actually partnering with a group called Holistic, which is doing this specifically. So they're implementing cannabis with their therapy, their mental health therapy regimens, and physical therapy as well. So we can speak offline, and I can put you in contact with them, but they're doing some amazing work in terms of really following these people longitudinally, helping them get their medical card, following their response to cannabis, keeping them plugged into mental health, to physical therapy. And, we're going to start to expand that program in as well.
Thank you very much. Courtney, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Brother President. And thank you to both of our speakers. This is incredible information as we're understanding how to get into this industry, which is still open, and we still have great opportunities. And of course, a lot of this, again, built on the backs of African Americans. OHBM is currently starting to focus on mental health. And so, Dayram, your comments were right on point and timely. We are going to be holding some trainings and mental health programs with young people in Harlem. And it would be great to get a better understanding of how we can integrate the cannabis topic and conversation into those trainings and into that program. So I'd like to hear from both of you how to best do that. And want everyone to know that there's a survey in the chat. It's a very simple survey. It's one question, just kind of focusing on an age group choice for providing these services. If you could all click on that and fill that out, it would be immensely helpful to our initiatives. But my question is, what's our message to our young people now?
I mean, Doctor, you want to take a first stab at it? Or?
Yeah. I think really it's to address the largest gap that exists in virtually every element within our society, whether political, social, economic, health, whatever, is the education. We have to again, we've been so conditioned to think in a certain way, especially with regard to mental health. It's funny that mental health has only become a recent, center point with health. We've always separated physical health with mental health, but they're all one and the same. Like I said earlier, you can't treat the body until you treat the mind. Like it's all connected. And with regard to, what our message should be to our younger generation is, like mental health, you should have a mental health specialist, just like you have a primary care doctor. Don't wait until you have a problem to seek, mental health, just like as a primary care doctor, the whole purpose is prevention, and being able to already have the type of coping mechanisms already ingrained so that when you do encounter an issue, you already know how to address it rather than working retroactively, because it's much harder to address an issue once it's already present in existence. And the problem with us is we wait until it's so severe to actually seek attention that by the time we actually do see someone, is at a point sort of no return, unfortunately, or it's so severe and it's such a high degree and magnitude that it becomes nearly impossible to resolve. So again, I think our messaging to our younger generation is to be engaged early, to seek help, I think we have to get away from this, I'm gonna do everything on my own mentality. That's not our people. We're a collective people, we're a social people. And I think by being part of westernization and then colonization of our culture, we've taken on this individualistic attitude, and that's not how that's not how we're gonna outperform, or not even outperform. That's not even how we're gonna be remotely competitive from any standpoint, whether it's economic, health related, social. We have to get back to our roots, and who we are as a people culturally, and do things as a group. It's funny, I listen to Dr. Claude Anderson, and he always talks about group economics. Like that's almost common sense,
Right.
because we as individuals have been left out of access to capital. Group economics is the only real solution. Like that to me is not even arguable. And so, with regard to mental health, I think we have to adopt that same sort of mentality. It's a network approach, it's a collective approach, and that's why, I really like what this group Holistic Can is doing, because they're combining various groups and we're developing a more comprehensive approach to mental health and physical health, because that's how you have to treat the body. The body is not an isolated system. It's a network of individual organs, that all function as one unit, and we have to approach it as such.
So I agree with what the doctor said. I'm gonna say two things on this because I think there's two important points. First, look, I think there's an education component when talking with our young people about the impacts of cannabis on our brain and physical and development at a young age, right? And there's a lot of science and a lot of data out there about consuming, under the age of 18. And the state is putting money towards that effort as well. So I think on a very plain level, there is some education there about folks should be aware of the impacts that it has to our brain and our growth when we're still adolescents. But the more important piece, and I think this is the part that we really need to focus on when talking to our young folk and the next generation, is that we need to reorient ourselves with the relationship with the plant. Something that I was talking with Algin and Dr. Hinson about the other day is, I would argue that the guys in our neighborhoods and we all know them, that are sitting on their couch smoking 7 blunts or smoking X amount of blunts a day, are self-medicating. They're self-medicating, right? And they're dealing with some type of mental health issue, some type of stress. Now, they might be misusing the plant, and this is where education comes into play. But we really need to reorient our relationship and understanding about what the plant is, what the medicine is, and how it can be an asset and value to us if we use it the right way. And I think the education there really is about proper use, responsible use, and what are the scientific impacts to my brain, to my development as an adolescent if I'm consuming. Those are all things that I think we need to just be aware of. Just telling kids to just say no to drugs doesn't work. That doesn't work. It hasn't worked. It's a failed policy. It's a failed program. We need to educate our young people, empower them with the information that they need to make responsible choices about their lives. And so, I think those are the two things. It's education, but also it's reorienting ourselves with what the plant is and what it can mean for our communities.
So Jesse, any final words? It's noon. Any final words?
Listen, guys, in times of time, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Saturdays to come and be part of this conversation. I can talk about this all day. I love this. I got another conversation I got to jump to right now because we're working on this. Guys, in terms of timeline, expect the regulations to come out in the next 3 to 4 months. And this is an opportunity now to go to Albany, to call your members in the Senate and the Assembly, say, these are the concerns that I have. How are you talking to OCM, the Office of Cannabis Management, about the rules and regulations they're going to implement? Guys, your voice is so powerful. Your voice as a collective, but as individuals, can make the difference. But you got to speak up. And so I encourage all of you, if there are points that you feel strongly about this mental health issue, we can follow up and plug you in with some of the individuals there. Now is the time to be part of the conversation. Please don't wait until the rules come out and everything happens and say, wait a minute, this doesn't work. Now is that time to be involved in the conversation with leaders like Aldrin and other leaders to help guide you. You can get in the room and have those conversations, and we're always here to be an ally to help you to do that. So really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys. This has been a great time, and look forward to continuing. Thank you so much, Aldrin. Thank you, brothers and sisters. Have a good one. Thank you, Dr. Hinson, and everybody else.
Thank you very much, Jesse. Have a great weekend, man.
Thank you, brothers.
Are there any additional questions out there? We want to definitely take advantage of Dr. Hinson's expertise. I see Jaja Simone's hand up. Please ask your question. Unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, good morning.
Morning.
I'm calling in from Tucson, Arizona, and I thought it was interesting when you guys were talking about the social equity components. And I just wanted to put out there that it is very important that if licenses that are dedicated to social equity remain within your social equity program, whatever your program is going to be in New York, because what's happening in other states, like my state.
I think we lost her. Yeah, I think we lost her. In the meantime, Mark Harrison, I see your hand up.
It's very it's a funny situation because I said it in the chat, it's like our approach to cannabis and marijuana is it's negative, and a brother kind of he honed in on it because he said that people are self-medicating on their couches and stuff like that, and that's usually our interaction with it. And now that it's kind of been thrust into our community and kind of brought to us and said, this is an opportunity, one, financial, but also as a treatment to mental health issues and things of that nature. There's still a trepidation from a huge portion of the community where we have seen people, who kind of checked out and they use marijuana. So it's going to be a convincing, and also it's going to be a re-educating community and how this is applicable, and then also how it's necessary. I work with mental health people, and I know that some of them, they use it. And out of the Department of OPWDD, I don't think that is a treatment that they have endorsed, but from what I'm hearing, maybe it really should have been. Maybe it would have helped a lot of the issues that people had. And so, it's more of I'd like to have this discussion again, and I'd actually like to bring this discussion and I like to my church, because I go to Mount Moriah AME and in Queens, and I'd love to have the same discussion because I think it's something with elected officials and things that nature that we really have to be on the cutting edge of, be for both issues, for the financial aspects of it, the licensing and certifications and all the different kind of things, but also because of the mental health issues that are pervasive in our community, and that we're seeing the remnants of it after COVID and those other things. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And as mentioned earlier, this conversation isn't meant to cover every aspect of cannabis. I mean, it's such a huge topic. We're just barely scratching the surface and kind of making an introduction to it. But Mark Harrison, thank you very much for your comments. I want to go back to Jaja Simone. I know she got cut off. Can you please finish
real quick? Can I?
Yes.
Before we go,
Sure.
Before we go in, just to address what Mr. Harrison said, that's actually one of the focuses of MediRootz. We're specifically targeting the Black churches in New York, so that we can have this conversation. Because to your point is to me, it's the educational piece. And I say this as a healthcare practitioner, but just as someone who's, I was a huge fan, of this before it was legal. I can say it now because it is legal, but it's one of the ways that I got through med school, to be very honest, is how I got through residency. We saw some incredibly traumatic events as residents, things that you wouldn't normally see. And I was having difficulty going to sleep, because I kept reliving those moments. So from a mental health standpoint, yes, it is an incredibly powerful therapeutic. And again, we have to, part of the education is to deconstruct. I keep saying this, is to decondition, deconstruct, and decolonize our perception of this. But it's much easier to teach someone something the right way the first time than it is to decondition them, right? And that's why I think we have to target our youth and teach them how to use this effectively, how to use this appropriately, so that we don't have to, teach them out of bad behaviors. So if this is something that, you're a conversation that you're interested in bringing to your church, I'm more than happy. That's typically what I do anyway. Go to community centers, churches, just to engage in the conversation, because I'm a huge proponent of the medical program, because it affords certain things that we need as a community, because we've been so heavily criminalized for it. People might be scared to even talk about it, let alone possess it. But having a medical card and being deemed as a medical patient affords you that legal protection, from a possession standpoint and from an employment standpoint. You mentioned working for an agency that may not be part of their regimen, but if you are deemed a medical patient, you cannot be terminated on the basis of your status as a medical patient. It is illegal. So, there are a number of huge benefits of being on the medical program, not only from a therapeutic standpoint, but just in terms of the protection that it affords, the variety that you have access to, the safety component, because we are seeing more, I know there's some controversy over it, but we are seeing more reports of toxic street cannabis, whether it's fentanyl laced or heavy metals, whatever. So from a safety standpoint, is also a huge issue. So I just want to leave it there and allow my sister to finish her comment.
Good morning. I'm sorry I got cut off. The point I was getting at was here in Arizona, the issue that we have with us having a lottery for our social equity program, we start out with only 26 licenses, and we have had MSOs, multi-state operators, people who are entities who already have multiple licenses here in our state. They have gone and solicited our social equity applicants. I mean, they have actually been door knocking, sending out mailers. They've been offering people as little as $1,000 a month plus free cannabis for 5 years, $250. It's been so ridiculous how the people have been solicited and preyed upon because they are social equity applicants. And the criteria for the social equity applicants is so, oh my God, it's so strict, so slim, it's so vague. It's just so messed up that if you don't protect those licenses and keep them in the social equity program or have a tight social equity program, you're going to have all of the licenses that are dedicated to social equity or to whatever the state deems what social equity is. You'll have all those licenses in the hands of current licensees and multi-state operators. That is not going to do anything for any of the communities that have been disproportionately affected, that have been ravished by the war on cannabis, and that are still being ravished by the war on cannabis, even though we're in states that have legal cannabis. So it's very, very important to look at how you structure your social equity program so that you make it so unsavory to the multi-state operators that you will have true
I think we lost again, but I mean, she brings up an incredible point, and I agree with her totally.
She's my partner. I'm one of the people, not to cut you off. My name is Celeste Rodriguez. I'm one of the principals on Acre 41 as well. So we actually we're had a lawsuit that we had out there. Last week, they deemed our lawsuit where they actually said we didn't have enough standing. They dismissed our case. We are going to continue to fight another place another lawsuit against the state. Um, I've been in the industry for 11 years out here in Arizona since inception. So I've been around from the town hall meetings when we're actually coming out with the regulations. Where we're at this point in time, and what she's just letting you guys know is the problem that's taking place with the people that are actually making up the regulations that are taking place for the social equity programs. They're all being paid, or they're all in bed with the multi-state operators or the investors currently that are in play, that are operational. So the social equity program, putting that up there, that's a huge step, but it's a half-tailed step at the end of the day because nobody's really putting the true time into making sure that the programs are really benefiting and protecting the social equity applicants. As far as them having funding, they've had funding before in different programs because we've also applied in Illinois. There's a big lawsuit that's taking place in Illinois at the same time, where it's the same thing. They have funding where they're saying that they're going to help these social equity groups get off the ground and be successful. But in the same token, they're being deemed where they're being awarded to currently investing or multi-state operators, and then they're actually never getting the money. So it's something that's taking place in California as well. With the expungements that are taking place, we did expungement fairs all throughout Arizona over our summer expungement fair for free. The multi-state operators and investors, they did the same thing. That's how they recruited their social equity applicants as well. By different trade associations that were placed in Arizona that were supposed to have credibility as being true trade associations. They're plotting against the social equity applicants as well. So we saw a little bit of everything that's taking place. The sad part about it is a lot of it is just smoking mirrors, that's taking place where they're leading you to believe that there's actually something taking place to actually assist and help. But if you really go to see where the funding is really coming from to help create these regulatory programs, you'll see that's the multi-state operators that currently invested operating entities now that are actually helping create all these different rules. So it's really a bigger mess than you guys could ever think, and we're living it. And I've been doing this, as far as being in lawsuits, I've been in lawsuits for the last 3 years, Illinois and Arizona. But Arizona is the one that me and Jaja are working on right now.
Thank you very much for that insight.
And I think Jaja's back on right now as well. Oh, did we lose her again? Oh no,
I'm here, but you covered it, Celeste. You covered what I was saying. So thank you very much.
No problem. I just knew you had cut off. So when you cut off, I came back in.
Thank you.
I see. Well, thank you both very much for shedding that light on us. You probably have a 100 Black Men chapter close by. What I would suggest is engage them in on that conversation as well, just to see, how a unified front can be more powerful in that regards, both in Illinois and in Arizona. So thank you very much for sharing that information with us. I do see 2 more hands up. Dion Powell.
Yes, good morning, family. My name is County Committeeman Dion Powell in the Bronx. Thank you, Will and Alan, for inviting me. I just want to know if I could put a few information and resources in your chat. I had an event this Sunday past called Cannabis and Hemp Studies with the academic side, which is Cornell University, SUNY Morrisville, Lehman College, Medgar Evers College, and Canada's McMaster University. So it's more inclusive for what we're talking about. And also I want to put the Office of Cannabis Management information in the chat, as well as the automatic expungements, because a lot of people don't know that there's a website the New York court system has for automatic expungement to check on it. And actually, if it's not there, to actually, look further into it. And lastly, I want to say to the minister, what's very key about my event, which I'm going to put in the chat as well, the part 2, is that we had a faith-based leader at the forefront, who's my client, and his church as well is looking forward to breaking the stigma because he has the biggest food pantry in the Bronx. So looking at the agriculture issue, but I'm just gonna put those things in the chat. So far, I had over 200 something people come to the event, and so far tickets are actually flying. I just put the event back up for the next one, and I'll put this information in the chat, okay? Okay, family, thank you so much for this event, okay?
Thank you very much, appreciate that. And V. Edwards, you'll be our final person, then I'll ask Dr. Hinson to make some final remarks afterwards, and we'll get on with our Saturday brunch. V. Edwards.
Yes, good morning all. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, family. I just wanted to follow up on a comment that was made earlier about self-medication. Just wanted to make sure those who are dealing with young people, I worked in a New York City school system as a counselor for quite a few years, and I just don't want us to put the message out that it's alternative is to use self-medicating through cannabis when often they need real help. You can combine the two, but that should be definitely stressed that talking to someone, talking out your problems is the first step that people should often take, especially youth who are not totally aware of what's going on. And I've often seen self-medication turns from alcohol to marijuana, to cocaine, to heroin, and so forth. So I just wanted to make that point to everybody listening that self-medicating needs to be addressed in that fashion. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Dr. Hinson.
Yeah, so I just want to thank you again for having me on. If there's ever a need for anyone to want to host an educational workshop on the various therapeutic benefits, how do we get engaged in this from a health standpoint, just reach out to me. I'll put my information in the chat again. But that's what I do full time now. I've gotten away from practicing in the hospital for the most part, because I think there are other elements of health and other tools that we can utilize that I find to be much more powerful, much more effective, safer, if used appropriately. And this is everything from cannabis to proper nutrition, to herbal therapy, to acupuncture, to reflexology. This is just one element of what I'm trying to incorporate in our sort of comprehensive medical regimen. It's just that this is a very timely event, just given how robust the conversation is, and how much, especially from an economic standpoint, this is going to grow to become. So again, if there's ever a need to have this conversation again, definitely reach out to me. We can schedule a time to meet with you individually or as an organization, and I'm more than happy to accommodate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hinson. So we want to end our program. As mentioned earlier, this wasn't a conversation to include all aspects of cannabis, but definitely an opportunity to learn a little bit more and start the conversation internally, so that we can at least get a tidbit of information that we can then take to our communities and continue to learn more about this. So once again, Dr. Hinson, thank you very much. Thank you all very much for joining us this Saturday morning, especially those who are on the West Coast in Arizona. Thank you for waking up early and being part of the conversation. I wish you all well and have an amazing Saturday. Enjoy it.
Oh, look at them pearly white eyes and the pearly white teeth. Those teeth look too white. I'm getting suspicious, judging by the fact that Freddie's probably like 3 million years old.
Thank you.
Fill their dentures.
Thank you.
They filled them all up and the bubbles are coming.
Thank you.
Wow, that is so cool.
Thank you.
Don't forget to complete the surveys.
I already completed it. And should we send them to other people too? The survey?
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, but she will family in a couple seconds, so just stay patient. We got them eyes and the nose and the, oh, wait a second.